My oh my, has the narrative changed? Blue Beetle star Xolo Mariduena is now putting on the brakes that the character could join James Gunn's DCU. He says that the film needs to perform at the box office now, and we've heard this narrative before with Shazam: Fury of the Gods and The Flash as well. And it did not bode well for those films, those actors, and those characters. But let's get into this. Fandango's Naz Perez asked Mariduena, have you had any conversations with James Gunn about the future of Blue Beetle? Because he has a connection to Peacemaker in the comics. Would you want to appear in Peacemaker Season 2 or the Booster Gold series? Mariduena responded, I've had the pleasure of getting to speak with Mr. James Gunn and the whole DC fam. And, at the end of the day, I think, first we have to cross this first hill and introduce Jaime to the world. But I think it's up to the audience to watch the movie. It's up to everyone to show up for the movie, and it's so wonderful that we get to make movies like this. And if it does well, we'll get to open more doors for Blue Beetles, and not even just for the people up here, but we've got a whole thing set up. So many Beetles to choose from, so many comics to choose from, and really just a whole world. He concluded saying, we're super appreciative that DC took the first swing at the live-action Latino superhero movie, so we're ready to do it again if the crowd wants it. So he's putting it on moviegoers on whether or not they want to see Blue Beetle continue in the DC universe and whether or not they want to see more Blue Beetle movies. I think that might be a tough row to hoe. Given the fact that the box office numbers do not look very good for this film. But before we get to that, we want to point out how this is such a huge change in the narrative for this film. So when James Gunn first announced his DC Universe slate, which was an absolutely idiotic move, basically killed all of these movies, saying that they didn't actually matter. You don't need to see them. I'm restarting it all over, so you don't need to actually go out and see these. But regardless, he said in January, and then to move into Blue Beetle, a fantastic film about a kid who is a marvelous part of the DCU. So he's talking about Blue Beetle being a part, that character being a part of the DCU and his plans going forward. He reiterated this when he was speaking to Michael Rosenbaum in June. He said the first DCU character for sure is Blue Beetle, and the first full DCU movie is Superman, referring to his Superman Legacy film. From there, we got comments from Blue Beetle director Angel Manuel Soto, who told Total Film that the film was or is indeed part of the DC universe. He said, we are part of the universe, we are part of the world, we are part of the plans that they have been creating for the future installments of the DCU. But we are not tied to all the films from the past. Yes, our movie lives in the world where superheroes exist, but that doesn't mean that a certain event or a certain alliance or certain things from the past dictate where our film is going. But he's still very definitive that the film was taking place in the DCU. So that was the narrative. Now we're getting from Xolo like, well, who knows if we're going to continue? It all depends on the box office and whether moviegoers show up. So we also had, Soto did say that they have like a trilogy planned out. He said our first movie, the way we wanted to do it was always with the mentality that we wanted to do 2 more at least. And taking the traditional 3-act structure of a story, we wanted our first movie to practically be the first act of a saga. So they were already planning to do a trilogy, but now it's like, we got to see if this movie is going to do well, if he's even going to be moving on. Huge shift in the narrative here, which I think shows that DC does not have any faith in this after those long-range box office predictions have come out. And those long-range box office predictions have not changed whatsoever. And then just kind of give you a little bit more on this narrative shift. We did have Soto basically begging people to come back to see the movie after they released that first trailer, which had George Lopez's character, Uncle Rudy, describing Batman as a fascist. This is what Soto had to say to Movie Maker in June. He said, we always wanted to have fun with the way Rudy talks about other superheroes, so the people who got mad at it give us a chance. We're just trying to have fun with the characters that we love, and everybody in our movie loves Batman and Superman and Flash. And of course, we have criticisms about all of them, as we all should, but that doesn't mean that we hate Batman. We love Batman. I think this guy's lying out of his teeth. You saw the I covered the interactions that he had with Geeks and Gamers, where he was like, "Oh, I've done my job. I pissed off the right people. That like I'm so glad that they're angry and mad and stuff." And that was like the whole point. The guy was like mocking people who were upset with that line, and now he's saying like, "Oh, please come watch my movie." After he realized that he made an absolute massive error by doing that, and then by including that line in the first place. So, including the line that you're saying Batman is a fascist, and then trying to mock people who are upset about that. Just super stupid error. And now he's begging people to come see the movie. And now we have Xolo Mariduena basically saying that the future of this film franchise is already dead because this film isn't going to get people to show up at theaters. So this is why we have these long-range box office predictions from Box Office Pro. They have absolutely not changed since they announced this back in July 20th. So it's been almost 2 weeks. Their predictions have not changed. You have opening weekend forecast of $12 to $17 million. That is absolutely horrendously abysmal. That is less than Haunted Mansion did in its opening weekend. That is less than what Elemental did in its opening weekend. Just truly atrocious numbers here. And they think that it's only going to make between 27 and 55 million domestic total. So the film, I think, has probably like an 80, 100 million budget. So that means it would have to be at least like around 250 million to break even globally. And you're saying it's only going to do 55 million. That means you have to do at least 150 million internationally, and that's on the high end, right? Very far out of reach. But again, we've seen this pattern before where these people are like, we don't know if these are gonna continue on with James Gunn's plan. It all depends on the box office. You had David F. Sandberg, director of Shazam, Fear of the Gods here. He said he definitely wanted people don't go see the movie. What I've been told is that there's nothing in the Shazam films that contradicts the future plans for DC. So the possibility for more Shazam is there. And if that's what you want, your best bet is to go see the film. The film pretty much bombed at the box office, and it looks like Shazam is not moving forward in the DCU. We had similar comments from the Flash director, Andy Muschietti. He told comicbook.com, we didn't talk about it. I think that we're all waiting to see how this movie does. Of course, there's excitement about continuing the story, especially if this movie is successful. Of course, there's an architecture in DC that is brewing and is being created, and the question is, will this new architecture absorb the story? He says the good thing about the multiverse is that it is possible. The multiverse allows all of this different worlds to coexist and interact. And so hopefully, yes, we don't know yet. That's the truth. But he clearly said that it all depended on the success of that film. It was an absolute massive failure. Shazam, as I said, was a failure. It looked like it lost around $108.2 million for DC Studios, Warner Brothers Pictures. And The Flash looks like it lost at least $169 million. And that's basing on like the conservative estimates for the production budgets for both of these films and the conservative estimates on the box office split for Warner Brothers Pictures and DC Studios with the theaters. So I don't think this bodes well at all for Blue Beetle. I think this movie is D.O.A. and they killed it themselves with the Batman is a fascist line and then mocking fans immediately afterwards. So they can only blame themselves for this.
Subscribe for more.